him.
Say, for the sake of argument, you're a Democratic president finishing out your last year in office. There's not a lot you're expected to do as a lame duck except endorse a Democrat for the upcoming election, but then early in the year, something unexpected happens. A Supreme Court justice dies suddenly in his sleep. Vacancies in the Supreme Court are infrequent as it's a lifetime appointment, so death and the occasional resignation are the only causes of an empty seat. And when it happens, it's the president's job to get the seat filled. So you set about the task of picking a successor, probably the last major decision you will make as president, when the Republican Senate tells you, yeah, we're not going to confirm anyone you nominate. And you say, well, if you think you've got the votes, you can reject my nominee and I'll pick someone else. And they say, oh no, we're not going to vote against your nominee. We're not going to hold a vote. What are you talking about? I haven't even nominated someone yet. We're not going to convene a vote on anyone you nominate. But that's your job. I make a nomination, the Senate holds a vote, and democracy decides who sits on the bench. Well, that's not what we're going to do. You're a lame duck. The next president will decide who sits on the Supreme Court. That's not how this works. That's not how we've ever done things. Certainly not when your party's had a lame duck in office. Well, it's what we're going to do. And you say, that's not what the Constitution says. And they say, the Constitution does not explicitly say we can't. Your wife has a saying for when Republicans act up. They go low, we go high. So in considering your current predicament, you try to think of what taking the high road might look like. The Republicans have always accused you of being too far left, so after some deliberation, you select a middle-of-the-road, utterly uncontroversial judge, the kind of candidate a functioning Senate should have no trouble confirming. You make a display of embracing the spirit of compromise, in the hopes they'll change their tune, or at the very least be shamed into convening a vote rather than admitting this had nothing to do with the timing or the nominee and was just about refusing to collaborate with a liberal. In response, the Republicans announced that not only will they still not convene a vote, some say that should a Democrat win the election, and they don't even know who the candidate is yet, they will hold the seat vacant for however long it takes to get a Republican in the White House. You didn't call their bluff. They are all too happy to admit that this is absolutely about dicking over liberals and guaranteeing as many conservatives as possible in the Supreme Court.
Conservatives don't give a fuck about respecting the system. They care about achieving their goals of making the United States as terrible as it can be.
There is no official policy for what to do if one party simply refuses to do its job. But there is a legal argument that if the Senate refuses to vote on your nominee, they are, in effect, giving you permission to appoint a judge without their approval, link in the down there part. This is technically a little extra-constitutional, but it is the law in many similar scenarios, and certainly if they're going to break the rules, you're within your rights to bend them.
In case anyone was confused, they're literally fascists. They don't give a fuck about the system. That's it. That's always been the case.
But they go low, we go high. How can you criticize them for going outside the Constitution if you're going to do it yourself? So being the grown-up, you grit your teeth and do nothing. Seemingly there's nothing to do but publicly shame them, keeping a running tally of how many days your nomination has sat on senators' desks without a vote. You can play this as keeping your integrity, the Democrats seizing the moral high ground. But in response, the Republicans seize the Supreme Court. Their guy wins the election, you finish out your term, and Republicans will put one of their own on the bench. And just before you leave office, and the new guy is inaugurated, and your nomination expires after 293 days without a vote, nearly 3 times the previous record, a Republican senator predicts that, under the new administration, the Democrats, the minority party in the House, Senate, and now Supreme Court, will be the biggest obstructionists history has ever seen. Think of the position this puts Democratic senators into. They have been preemptively denigrated for the exact behaviors Republicans have relied on for the last 8 years. After 2 terms of misuse, every means of obstructing an unfit executive branch, from filibustering bills to shutting down the government rather than approve a budget proposal, has just been defined as going low. Worse, in the event of a Supreme Court appointment being literally stolen by the opposing party, it might be defensible to not convene a vote on whomever that party nominates, Except that's exactly the tactic Democrats have spent 10 months condemning. If everything that might restore democratic norms is tainted by the Republicans who violated those norms in the first place, then the only honorable move left is compliance. Give Republicans whatever they want, confirm their judge as quickly and smoothly as possible, treat the situation like it's fair, because that's what they should have done when it actually was. This is, somehow, going high. And that comment from the Republican senator belies the truth. They know what they're doing, and they're not ashamed. They know Democrats aren't obstructionists. They're counting on it. When one party can be relied on to do the exact opposite of your worst behavior, good strategy is to do to them as destructively as possible whatever you don't want them to do to you. The new Republican norm is you go high, we go low. Now, this is a long-standing Republican thing. And
sadly, it's very effective. Letting other people sit on their moral high ground and just destroying your country, very good.
We'll talk about how the alt-right comes into it by and by. And though it's effective, it's not sophisticated. I mean, I just got finished with my intro and I'm already out of things to say about it. So let's turn the camera around and ask not why the technique is popular, but why Democrats keep falling for it. On the face of it, it would appear Democrats are a lot more concerned with being called hypocrites than Republicans are, which would seem a very solvable problem. Republicans are going to yell so much for the tolerant left, no matter what form our opposition takes.
In chat and warn me in mirror and while everything sucks right, but hopefully everyone else can enjoy this Friday. Fuck DNM balls.
Remy, thank you for the 22 months. Thank you.
But clearly it's not that simple, or we wouldn't be having this problem. Republicans are striking at something more fundamental to American liberalism that makes these charges of hypocrisy hard to ignore. So, what's wrong with liberals? The modern American Democrat...
An easier question to answer would be, what's right with liberals? That list is much shorter.
...is in an unenviable position. You need two things to win an election: votes and funding. And there are a number of things that voters care passionately about and that they have no hope of ever getting from Republicans. But unfortunately for Democrats, they are the exact things big-ticket donors despise, which is why Democrats in very secure districts who tend to run unopposed are the ones most willing to talk about them. The left is, in fact, a very heterogeneous group with a mountain of conflicting interests and decades of infighting. So it's very hard to appeal to all of them and wealthy donors. Republicans don't have this problem, or at least they don't have it as bad. Despite many, in some ways, even more passionate and fundamental differences, conservatives value loyalty and in-group cohesion. And this keeps them coming together every 4 years in a surprisingly unified voting bloc. It also helps that they fucking hate us, and most would sooner vote for a Republican they despise than any kind of Democrat. And lucky for them, the things conservative voters want are much more aligned with corporate interests. So building a coalition on the left is a lot of work. And faced with this challenge, there is a liberal tendency to turn away from policy and focus instead on process. Generally uncontroversial things like bipartisanship, compromise, decorum. And fair enough, the absence of these things in Washington over the years is certainly something everyone left of center is sick of, but they're not things Democrats can make happen all by themselves. And more to the point, none of them are results. Their means.
It would be like if you're playing a card game with someone, maybe poker, I don't know, fucking pick a game you like. And you know someone else at the table is cheating. Like they have spare cards under their sleeve and they're using them to cheat. And you know this and you're like, well, I can't do anything because if I cheat, then I'm as bad as you are. So I'm going to keep playing, but I'm going to play the fair way. They're going to keep cheating and I'm going to keep playing the fair way because that's what's right and that's what we should do. Why? Why the fuck are you doing that? Like, this is not effective.
Like, a willingness to compromise is not a position. And when you overfocus on how you should go about things and not what things you should go about, It fosters a certain philosophy about government that is both highly flawed and highly exploitable. The valuing of means at the expense of ends. Most people would say that the ends justify the means.
Is this the section? No, I think it's towards, this part goes crazy.
Is a crap moral philosophy. Democrats would agree. But liberals often overcorrect to the point where thinking about the ends at all is thought of as, in a vague, reflexive kind of way, innately immoral. There's a very Enlightenment way of thinking that implies that, with the right means, the ends take care of themselves, and immoral behavior becomes functionally impossible.
This has the same energy as the people that are like, guys, if we silence the Nazis that keep talking about white genocide, that doesn't do anything. Okay? We should let them talk in the public sphere and have the ideas battle it out. Because if we had a good debate between a Nazi who wants to kill people and the people he wants to kill existing, we're bound to have good conversation. And people should pick the right side. And it's like, I don't know if you know this thing called propaganda. But actually silencing Nazis is the best way to deal with bad ideas. Like, there are things that you should discuss, and there are things that I am willing to have discussions about. We're not discussing whether or not the Nazi is right about white genocide. That's not happening. Okay? Their debate is literally propaganda. Yeah, because their opinions are not based in reality. There is no debate to be had when your opinions are not even remotely based in reality. Right?
I want to stress that claiming political group A adheres to philosophy X is always
also
reductive.
I'm going to say something also. There are some ideas that are so inherently bad, we actually don't need to discuss them. Like, I don't feel like we need to have a discussion about whether or not Nazis deserve a place to speak about their ideas. Or like people who hate, like homophobes. I don't think we actually need to give those people any credit. You actually don't have to hand it to them. Like the idea that you would hate someone based on who they want to be with, I don't even feel like we need to debate that idea. There's what argument could you possibly make? You know?
Human beings hold many patterns of thought simultaneously and slip between them depending on context. This is less the key to understanding liberals and more one pattern
No, I didn't, Yossarian.
of thinking liberals often slip into. But this idea of the perfect system that can only spit out justice is how liberals tend to think about democracy. We can call this values-neutral governance, and you can see why it would appeal when you're trying to sum all the demands placed on a politician. Under this thinking, you don't need to engage with the needs and desires of your constituency, your donors, or even your opposition. Because if democracy is working, everyone deserving will get what they need as a matter of course. That's what democracy is for, to divine what is right out of a cacophony of different voices. It's okay for people, even people with power, to have bad ideas, because bad ideas will always be outnumbered by good ideas, checks and balances. Hell, you can have bad ideas and it won't make any difference, provided you commit to obeying a just set of rules. Only justice will ever be produced by them. And you can see how utterly paralyzing it can be when half the participants of that system refuse to play by those rules. Values-neutral governance is an engine that only runs by mutual consent. Now, the system is supposed to be self-repairing. If the rules are broken in a way that it doesn't have specific contingencies for, you can write those contingencies. But you'd have to pass them through Congress or the courts. As in, you'd need the cooperation of the people violating the rules. All that's left then is to fix the system without their approval. But that's going outside the rules. That's thinking about ends. And to you, the system is morality itself. You can't go outside it and still behave ethically. If the problem is people breaking the rules, you can't fix that by breaking them further. At this point, the Democratic senator usually throws up both hands and says, fuck it then, I'm going to do what the Republicans should be doing. I'm going to follow decorum and look for compromise. I will not be responsible for the degradation of our governmental system. Maybe everything still goes to shit, but nobody could claim that I didn't do my job. And once upon a time, I think they genuinely believed that this was leading by example. But I don't think today they're under any illusions that this will right the vessel, appeal to Republicans' better nature. But Democrats keep doing it, because on some level they genuinely believe that even when it accomplishes nothing, following the rules to the bitter end is the noble thing to do. The captain goes down with the ship. I'm using poetic understatement when I say, this can be very frustrating. To us as citizens, the most important question is what happens next? Republicans break a rule, Democrats take the high road, and what happens next? In practice, the answer is always, they get what they want, but we get a philosophical victory. But when the questions that govern our lives are, will I get shot by police, or will my kid die in an emergency room for lack of funds, unless it's gonna get my kid a philosophical blood transfusion, values-neutral governance isn't useful. And being told to trust in a system that didn't meet our needs so good before it got very obviously broken and our representatives decided it was more honorable not to fix it is, pardon my Anglo-Saxon, a bunch of bullpucky. I'll say one thing for Republicans. They believe in something. It's a bunch of classist, racist, misogynist doolally, but they believe it, and they govern according to those beliefs. There is no contradiction in blocking a liberal judge and bullying Democrats to confirm a conservative one. They want to overturn the right to abortion.
And they did! They did it! Yay!
Whatever it takes to put a pro-lifer on the bench. It is fully consistent behavior. And the problem isn't that they break a bunch of rules along the way, it's that what they're trying to accomplish is wrong. But Democrats focus on the rule breaking and not the intent behind it, because despite what Republicans will tell you, many Democrats are terrified of talking about abortion for fear that taking a stand on a wedge issue will lose them their coalition. Believing in a politics where everyone can disagree on everything and democracy sorts it out is wishful thinking born of necessity. It feels like it shouldn't need to be said that this ideal has never existed at any time in history. At the very beginning, who got to own land, who got to vote, and who was or wasn't property were enshrined in our government. And none of these things were the democracy machine spitting out justice. They were value judgments made by people convinced that them profiting the most off the system was proof it was behaving rationally. Anyone who thinks democracy is impartial is going to get played. It's also worth noting that this don't worry about your conscience, just trust the system argument is the exact opposite of the don't worry about the system, just trust your conscience argument that liberals use to defend ethical capitalism. Just saying. But on the
fucking true. Oh, we're good. Thank you for the gift sub. Thank you. So anyways, okay. I feel like this is a very good video and I like to share it as often as I can. And I think we know all of this, but it hurts to hear it spelled out. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I just wanted to say, I just want to show that people that video because this idea that's like, well, we can't stack the Supreme Court because it would set like a bad precedent. And then we're going to have like, we're not going to have our decorum, guys. Fuck off. Fuck off, dude. How many more rights do we have to lose before you do anything?